when there's danger crisis, the first part of the nervous system to be affected is the ventral subbranch of the parasympathetic nervous system. Remember, that's the part that's responsible for social engagement. In other words, when we are in the presence of danger crisis, the first thing that happens is our social connectivity goes offline. Our ability to smile, laugh, connect with other people, etc. If the danger crisis persists, then the second part of the nervous system to be activated is the sympathetic. Remember, the sympathetic nervous system is like the accelerator. Now the organism is ready for fight or flight. If fight or flight does not do the trick, does not get the job done, and the threat persists, now the dorsal subbranch of the parasympathetic nervous system is activated. Remember, that is the part of the nervous system that's like the brake. So now the organism freezes, either dissociates or faints. We can think of the sympathetic nervous system like an accelerator and the parasympathetic nervous system like a brake. So we're going to use the analogy of these two pedals to explain how we end up with trauma symptoms. Think about it this way. Life is like driving down the highway. When we're driving down the highway, we need both pedals. We need to sometimes accelerate and sometimes brake. If the drive is smooth, sometimes we will gently accelerate and sometimes we will gently brake. That's exactly like our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Sometimes they gently accelerate, sometimes they gently brake. Now, what happens if we're driving down the highway and a truck suddenly swerves in front of you? If that happens, you might demonstrate all of the reactions presented in the polyvagal theory. First of all, you might swear and flash various fingers. In other words, your social engagement system just went offline. You also might suddenly accelerate to avoid an accident or suddenly slam on the brakes to avoid an accident. But then once you avoid the accident, you will probably return to your baseline of just gently braking, gently accelerating as necessary. You just continue with your drive. But now what would happen if there are constant roadside dangers? Every which way there's a potential accident happening. What are you going to do? Well, you might decide to never let down your guard. You might constantly yell at other drivers. You might constantly accelerate or constantly brake, maybe even at the same time. In fact, this might become your new default driving style. Just yelling at people, braking, randomly accelerating. If that happens, now your driving style itself is inherently dangerous. Even if there's no roadside peril at this point, your driving style itself is dangerous.